Hi, I'm Mallory, and welcome to Mallory in the Library, or welcome back if you have been with us before. So, I know that this has been an exciting holiday time for a lot of people. I think today is the third day of Kwanzaa, so if you are celebrating Kwanzaa, enjoy that. And today we are going to talk about the Northern Lights. You can see behind me there's all sorts of colors and exciting parts of these stories that we're going to get into. So the Northern Lights appear in the Arctic during the winter months. There's all sorts of bright and lovely colors that fill the sky, and there's all sorts of ways that people around the world think that the Northern Lights came to be, or how they interact with them, or celebrate them. We're going to focus on stories from Canada today, since we are in Canada, and we have three stories of how important the Northern Lights are to people who live up north. And so we're going to start with this one called Orphans in the Sky. It's written by Jean Bushy and illustrated by Vladiana Kryokra. We haven't even seen a lemming all day, little sister complained. She trudged across the tundra behind her older brother. I'm tired. Let's go back to camp. First we will pick some more cranberries, brother replied. They are small, but they will keep us from starving. For many days there had been no food in the Inuit camp where brother and little sister lived. The two orphans had stayed with their aunt after the death of their parents. They had set out early that morning, hoping to find some food they could bring back to share with their people. While they were away, the best hunter in the camp called the people together. We will go across the river, he said. Perhaps the hunting will be better over there. Quickly, the adults took down the tents. They rolled their belongings in caribou skins and slung them over their backs. With the children and dogs following behind, they started for the river. In the confusion, no one noticed that brother and little sister were missing. When the two orphans returned, the campsite was deserted. Only a few small skins, a tangle of dog harnesses, and a broken trap marked where the tents had stood a short while before. Why did they go? Little sister cried in dismay. Why have they left us behind? Don't worry, my sister, said her brother. We will catch up with them. When the people reached the river, the men tied their kayaks together to make a raft to take their belongings to the other side. They pushed the raft into the swirling river. The freezing water rose to their knees, then to their waists, then to their chests as they waded beside the raft. At times they lost their footing, fought against the current, and slipped beneath the icy water, but finally they reached the other side. The men made trip after trip until all their belongings were safely across the river. Then they began to ferry the women and children across on the raft. Brother and little sister reached the river edge just after the last of the people left the shore. A boy on the raft turned and saw the orphans. He cried, It's little sister and brother. We must go back for them. But the eyes of the adults were fixed on the far shore. They did not hear the cries of the children over the rushing water. What are we going to do? Little sister cried as she watched the raft become smaller and smaller. We are all alone. They will return for us, brother replied. But first, we must find shelter for the night. The two children returned to their old campsite and tried to find things they could use to make a shelter. Little sister found a small piece of flint in a caribou bag, but all brother found was a dried out sealskin too small to make a tent. At least I can use your flint to start a fire, brother said. By the time the sky was dark, his fire burned brightly. The two children huddled beside the warm blaze and ate the cranberries they had picked early that morning. Brother wrapped the sealskin around his sister, and they watched the stars appear in the sky. We cannot survive alone, Brother said. We must live with one of our animal cousins until our people return. What about Netzrik, the seal? We cannot swim in the icy sea like Netzrik, Sister replied. We do not have a thick layer of blubber to keep us warm. Tuktu, the caribou, will protect us, Brother suggested. You might remember that word if you were with us last week in the caribou hunting story, when they also call them Tuktu. So it sounds like they're from the same place. Tuktu runs too swiftly, little sister replied. We cannot keep up with him. We could live with Nanook, the bear, Brother said after some thought. Little sister shook her head. I am afraid of his sharp teeth and long paws. Besides, Nanook swims for miles in the ocean, and we could never do that. The night passed. Brother named all the animals he knew, but there was not one with whom they could live. It would probably be pretty scary to live with a polar bear, even if you knew that the bear was to protect you. At last, little sister looked up at the stars. We could live with the stars in the sky, she said. You are wise, little one, Brother replied. We would be safe, high above the earth. But as the children joined hands and rose into the night sky, little sister cried out, It is too dark up here, and I am afraid. Strike a light with your flint, Brother replied. As the spark from his sister's flint shot across the sky, the boy laughed. The sealskin in his hand crackled loudly. It echoed across the tundra like a drum. Do that again, little sister exclaimed. She was no longer afraid. Through the night, Brother and little sister filled the sky with streaks of light and made the heaven roar. I think that's something that we see a lot in the summertime. Sounds like thunder and lightning. When morning came, they curled into the clouds and slept. For many nights, the children played in the sky. They were so happy they forgot they had ever lived on earth. Then, one evening, Brother looked down on the place where their old camp had been. Sister, he called, our people have returned for us. Let's show them our new game, little sister exclaimed. Streaks of fire shot from her flint, and the tundra below echoed with the rumble of Brother's sealskin. Fearfully, the people cried, It's the orphans we came to find. See how powerful they are now? Then they called little sister by the name of Lightning, and Brother they named Thunder. They begged the children to return to live with them. What shall we do, my sister? Thunder asked. The heavens were quiet as Lightning thought. At last she said, On earth we were orphans. Up here the sun is our father, the moon is our mother. The northern lights and the stars are our brothers and sisters. This is where we belong. From then on, thunder and lightning made their home in the sky. But each autumn, when the heavens are filled with the crash of Brother's sealskin and the fire from little sister's flint, the people remember the two orphans who lived with them so long ago. So I really like that story, and I love the beautiful illustrations and all of the colors that you see. The next story we're going to read takes place probably in modern times, I would say, and it's a story of two young girls, and it's called Painted Skies by Carolyn Mallory, and it's illustrated by Amei Zhao. And inside it says, To my parents, Florence and Dale Herman, for inspiring me with their love of books. And this is such a beautiful illustration. I'd like to share it. Leslie leapt off the steps, all arms and legs, like a young caribou trying to keep up with the herd. Whump! The snow was hard packed, with only a light layer of fluff. Ulipika landed beside her laughing. The girls lay on their backs, their breaths forming small frosty clouds. They swept their arms and legs up and down as if they were ptarmigans trying to get off the ground and fly away. A ptarmigan is a sort of Arctic bird that lives where it's very cold. I didn't think there would be so much snow here in October, Leslie said. I'm glad my mom bought me new winter clothes before we moved. Oh my, could you imagine making snow angels in October? A velvety darkness, blacker than the blackest raven, wrapped itself around them. Look, Leslie said, pointing, the sky is green. She closed her eyes tight and opened them again. Then she looked at Ulipika. Her friend's dark brown eyes opened wide. Holding hands, the girls rose. Pink swirls now flashed with the lime green. Leslie moved closer to Ulipika. Huge ribbons waved in the wind. Leslie shivered. The colors consumed more of the sky and glided closer, like a silent, snowy owl. When Leslie was afraid, her mother had taught her to whistle. Squeezing Ulipika's hand, Leslie took a deep breath, pursed her lips, and started to blow. Stop whistling, Ulipika said. They'll hear you. She took off her mitts and quickly moved the fingernails of one hand back and forth across the fingernails of the other hand, making a clicking noise. What will hear me? Leslie asked. Ulipika kept rhythmically moving one set of fingernails over the other. Leslie inched steadily back to the house with Ulipika behind her. If we move slowly, she thought, whatever's in the sky won't notice us. The stars twinkled through the green and pink silky sheet that rippled overhead. Leslie felt her heart beat a little faster. Could the sky colors hear her? Would they get close enough to touch her? That might be scary. Spirits? Leslie whispered to her friend. Ulipika nodded her head. Anirit, spirits, she said. Leslie held her breath and stared as the streaks of color changed, painted more of the sky, and drifted closer. Should we run back to the house? Leslie whispered to Ulipika. We don't have to be afraid, as long as you don't whistle again, Ulipika said. What kind of spirits are they? Askarnit are what we call them, northern lights. Lights? Not spirits? Look closely, said Ulipika. Do you see how all the long threads of lights follow one after another? Those are people running. That's what my grandma says. Oh, Leslie said, squinting her eyes. Wow, she whispered. I can see them. These lights are our Anirit, the spirits of our great-grandparents or friends that have died. They are playing a game with a ball, kind of like soccer, Ulipika said. My grandmother told me that if you whistle, the lights will come closer and the ball might hit you on the head. Because these spirits are very strong, they use a big old walrus skull for a ball. Nobody wants to get hit by that ball. If you make clicking sounds with your fingernails, the spirits will know to stay away. Leslie looked up at the sky and smiled as she took off her mittens and clicked her fingernails. They're beautiful, she said. Sometimes green, sometimes red, the night sky dances. Stars peek through satin pink with a wink and a flicker, a wisp of yellow gauze as the sky breathes with light, splashes of purple and silver gray, a sail, a sheet, a streak, and with one great gust, gone. Sorry, it seems to be a problem. So there's a part at the end of this story that explains what the Northern Lights are. It says, what are the Northern Lights? Northern Lights, Ascarnate Inuktitut, or Aurora Borealis, as they are also called, are colored lights that illuminate the night sky if the conditions are right. Auroras are caused by high-speed particles from the sun striking the gases in the atmosphere. The Earth is a giant magnet, which attracts these particles from the sun to its magnetic poles, north and south. The gases glow as a result of being hit by the particles. Since the particles are moving, it looks like lights are dancing across the sky. Northern lights cannot be viewed from everywhere. The farther north you go in North America, the more likely you are to see these lights. You can also see them in Northern Europe. Your best chance of seeing Northern Lights is on a clear, moonless night around midnight. So the next story, I think, is my favorite one. It's called Aurora, A Tale of the Northern Lights, and it's by Mindy Dwyer. Early one morning, long ago, in a long ago northern land, a baby girl was born. Her mother named her Aurora, which means the rosy light of dawn. This faraway place knew only a daylight sky, for the sun would glide from one end of the sky to the other, hugging the horizon, but never slipping below. As each day passed, only the changing colors of the sky, from shimmering blue to an eerie green to the softest pink, would signal the time of day. Carpets of tundra filled with delicate wildflowers stretched as far as the eye could see in this land without darkness. Caribou lived alongside Aurora and her people. Each year the caribou gathered into great herds and traveled an old familiar path to a mysterious midnight place, later returning to their home of light and flowers. Aurora grew into a dreamy young girl, curious about what lay beyond the distant horizon. She wondered where the caribou went and often daydreamed of traveling with the herds, prancing across the tundra. Under the pink glow of an early morning sun, Aurora spotted a lone caribou. How strange that he was not with his herd, she thought. At first she followed him, watching as the caribou playfully kicked up his hoofs. Then Aurora ran and the caribou ran, frolicking together across the tundra in a magnificent dance. Before she knew it, Aurora was in the open tundra, far from her family. Feeling adventurous, she was ready to walk the way of the caribou. Soon, Aurora grew hungry. Deep in the purple shadows, she found some blueberries. She plopped to the ground to rest and enjoyed their sweet taste. The velvety blue color of the berries reminded Aurora of a story grandmother told of a place where darkness fell each night and the sky turned a deep and peaceful indigo. How she longed to see this for herself. As Aurora continued her journey across the soft green tundra, she was comforted by the memory of her favorite grandmother. Grandmother's gentle voice told once more of the dark sky Aurora had never seen. In the dark times, the sky wrapped itself around us. Inside each one of us, there is a glow that lights the way. It keeps us warm, and we are not afraid. Grandmother's words were a mystery to her. Aurora felt sure she would understand them when she arrived in the land where darkness fell and where the sky turned the color of ripe blueberries. The caribou continued to lead Aurora in her long journey from home. To be safe and warm in the dark place, Aurora began to collect the colors from the daylight sky. As days passed, Aurora gathered delicate pink morning light and put it in her pocket. The midday light was a shining silver blue, and this she placed in her pocket too. Twilight glowed a luminous green. This was Aurora's favorite time of day, and she filled her pockets with its color. She walked and then danced with the changing colors of the sky. Suddenly, a boreal wind began to snap at Aurora's dress, and she felt its chill. The sun dipped below the edge of the earth, and the sky closed in around her with the deepest color she had ever seen: darkness. This must be the place of mystery, Aurora thought as she gazed at the glittering sky. And though this darkness was strange and new, Aurora felt safe with the light she knew glowed inside of her. She reached into her pockets and flung the colorful lights she had gathered into the dark sky. Aurora played with the lights, admiring the way they danced across the sky, just as she had danced across the tundra with the lone caribou. The lights grew even brighter, shimmering like a curtain of color in the darkness. Aurora's family saw the dancing lights and followed, hoping they would find their beloved daughter. Although she had brought the colors of the daylight sky to comfort her, Aurora found that she was not afraid in the dark place of the indigo sky. She now understood grandmother's mysterious words. Together again, Aurora and her family celebrated her journey with the caribou, which had led Aurora to discover courage and her own inner light. The adventurous spirit of Aurora lives on. When you gaze into the night sky of the north and see the dancing lights, you are watching Aurora's many colors collected on her special journey long ago. And so that's that one, my favorite one. And this one has a dedication at the end, and it says, "Dedicated to Bill, who brought me to Alaska." Before we go, I'll share with you some facts about Northern Lights and different legends from Stories of the Aurora by Joan Marie Galat, and it's illustrated by Lorna Bennett. So this isn't really a storybook. This is more of an information book, but it does have stories in it. And in this book, I learned that there are stories from the Vikings about the Northern Lights, from the Greek people, from Algonquin people, from the Mi'kmaq people, Inuit people, and I think that there's a story even from China. Let me see. And so this is a kind of a picture of what a Painted Skies story said about the Earth's poles and being a magnet. And so this book says about the whistling too. There's a section here, it says superstitions. It says, "When auroras are low in the sky, do not whistle. You will not live long if you breathe in the lights. Always wear your hat outside or the lights might burn your hair. Come home before it gets dark. The lights can steal young people away, and the colored lights come from missing children's parkas." So I think we saw that the kids in our story were okay. And it even tells you what gases, remember how we talked about the gases, make which colors. So mostly oxygen makes green, which is what we breathe, and oxygen can also make red, and then nitrogen can make red. And you can even, in this picture, see them from space, which is pretty cool. So any person can see the lights. They are really hard to predict when they will come, and I know that some people go all over trying to find them and sometimes have a really hard time seeing anybody or seeing anything of the lights. Now the last thing that I wanted to share with you today is that I think that the Northern Lights are so fun to draw pictures of. And so if you have any drawing materials around your house, like markers, pencil crayons, crayons, paints even, I know that sometimes washable markers, you can use water on them and they turn into watercolor paints. So I wanted to share with you a picture that I made this morning. That reminded me of the Aurora story that we read. And if you want to make a picture of the Northern Lights, I would love if you would do that. And if you want, please feel free to leave a comment on one of our social media platforms like Facebook that has a picture of your drawing. We would love to see that. So thank you very much for watching. Next week, we will be starting off the new year by reading stories about just being silly and having fun being silly. So I hope that you join us next week, and thank you so much for joining today. Have a great week. Ready?